If you've been online lately, you've probably heard that running a business is super easy and anyone can do it. Well, that's complete nonsense. We're here to share with you the real world of entrepreneurship. Welcome to I Can't Hustle Any Harder Than This.
On today's episode of I Can't Hustle Any Harder Than This, we are interviewing me, Rachael Wonderlin. And I'm a little scared for the questions that I'm going to get asked by my co-host and
Emily,
my other
what?
co-host.
Hi, I'm Natalie.
Got Emily
All
and Natalie.
right.
So, yeah. What do you have for me?
Go ahead, Nat.
I feel like today is going to be a little bit of a meta episode. At least that's sort of my vision. Because it's your podcast and we're interviewing you. And I thought it would be good to talk about why you decided to start this podcast, talk about the business, talk about... I have a bunch of ideas. But let's start with, why did you start this podcast?
No.
No.
Let's start with let's talk about the business
You
first.
think so? Okay, fine. Let's do that. No, I like it.
This is what I want. I want a primary business overview because some people might not know.
Yes.
Then we can divvy into the podcast.
Emily was like,
and then
Nat,
from
go
there.
ahead. Wrong.
Yeah,
That was the wrong choice.
that's my bad.
Okay,
Sorry, Nat.
so...
New choice.
New choice. So the business, the bidness, the whizness, the woman-owned business.
Oh my goodness.
As they say on
Broad City.
Broad City, is Dementia By Day. And Dementia By Day is a dementia consulting firm that works with senior living companies all over the country and sometimes internationally. We help them build dementia care programs. We help them build brands. We help them figure out what the residents are going to do all day, how they educate staff, how they educate families. That came from working as a dementia care director. I got my master's in 2013, and I was 24, so no one wanted to hire me to do anything because I would go to these job interviews to be like a dementia care director or just whatever at senior living buildings, and they'd look at my resume and be like, "Oh, well, you have a great education, but you don't have a lot of experience." I'm like, "What do you want me to do? I'm 24. Like, of course I don't have that much experience. I've been in school like this whole time." So, finally, through networking, I got an interview at a Brookdale senior living building in North Carolina where I lived at the time. And because of the woman who I knew pretty much helped me get that job. And she was like, "Okay, you should hire Rachael to be the dementia care director." So I was, and I did, and I loved it. Started a blog called Dementia By Day. The blog turned into my first book with Johns Hopkins University Press. That turned into my second and third books with Johns Hopkins University Press. By the time my first book was coming out, I was working in my third dementia care building. I felt like I could do it with my hands tied behind my back. And then I got laid off. And I went home and I opened my laptop and I was like, I'm going to find a new job. I was on Indeed, for like 10 minutes. And I was like, screw it. I can't do this. I cannot go work for somebody else again. I can't do it. I don't have it in me. I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to leverage the book that's coming out, the blog that I already have. And I'm going to just figure out how to make this a business and do that.
How old were you at this time?
26. Maybe I was 27.
Okay.
Yeah, I was probably 26, 27, somewhere in there.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was young.
So I work with Rachael. She hired me like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
The other day, so we're working on a project right now that it's a video all about Dementia By Day, what we do, and I was grabbing lunch before we were going to do some voiceover recording with the guy who is doing the voiceover recording, our friend Kyle.
Well, he was in one of the first episodes.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was in one of the first episodes of this podcast. But anyway, we went to this soup place to get food, and we ran into an acquaintance of Kyle's, and he asked me, "What do I do?" And I said, "I work for a dementia consultant, and we help senior living companies build dementia care brands." And he goes, "Wow, that's really specific." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess it is."
Yeah.
What are people's reactions usually when you tell them what you do? And do you feel like what you do is not weird, but offbeat or strange or people don't get it? What do you think is like the general perception of what you do?
The first thing, people don't understand it. So even though a lot of times I say it like you just said it, but people will be like, oh, so you work with patients with dementia. And it's like, people living with dementia is the right phrasing. And no, not really. We work with companies who work with them. And still a lot of people are like, okay, and then they just kind of move on from it. But usually it's some version of that, or they make a terrible joke like, oh, well, you're going to know if something's wrong with me. Like, what if I have dementia? But they're like doing it in this jokey way. And I'm just like, okay, and it's uncomfortable and it's like not funny. And I think it's like a weird social, they feel like they have to respond in some way.
Yeah.
And some people's like coping mechanism for not knowing what to say is humor, even if it's not funny.
It has to feel really old for you because you've
so
been doing
old.
this for like 10 years. It happened to me just for the first time the other day where I told somebody what I do. And I said, people living with dementia. And this person was like, with what? And I said, oh, people living with dementia. I thought maybe I had misspoken or something. And then he goes, what? And then I realized he was telling a dementia joke. And I didn't know what to say.
What?
So I was just kind of like, okay, anyway. So it's new, totally new for me. But I get it. People are
very
really
old.
uncomfortable talking about dementia also.
Potentially, yeah. And it's interesting too, like Nat, because you're newer to this versus like Rach, you have been doing it and talking it and living it for so long that now when people ask you, it's different. It's like, my name is Rachel and I do this. Like, it's such a part of your identity.
Sometimes I don't even tell people what I do. Like, I remember I was in Hawaii. This was 2018. I was there for a consulting work gig, which was awesome. And I had my family with me and everything. And I was working and I had to Uber back to where we were staying. And the Uber driver was like, oh, what are you doing in Hawaii? I was like, oh, I'm here for work. And he's like, what do you do? And I'm like, okay, I've got like 15 minutes in this Uber. Do I really want to start talking about dementia? And the answer was no. And I said, I'm a journalist. And he was like, oh, okay. And we moved on. Because I want to help people. I want to give them advice and things like that. But sometimes I'm just tired.
Yeah.
And if I tell people I work in dementia care, they're like, oh, so this thing happened, or like my so-and-so. And I'm like, oh man, like I love to help people, but sometimes I'm tired and I just want to sit in an Uber and like not tell anybody. But I feel like this immense responsibility that if I say what I do, people, and if they're like, oh, can I ask you about this? Like, of course I'll answer their questions. So sometimes I'm just like, I don't even want to tell anybody like what I do because it is weird. And I invented this job and I had somebody tell me that it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So I was 22 and we had to interview people about, like I was working on my master's degree and part of the program was like interviewing somebody in our field about stuff in our field. And so I was paired up with this geriatrician who's a medical doctor who works with people who are older, right? And she was like, at the end of this little interview, she was like, so what do you want to do? And I was like, well, 22, 23-year-old me was like, well, eventually I'd like to work with different companies around the country and build dementia care environments and do like interior design for dementia care. And she scoffed at me. She said, that job doesn't exist.
Wow.
And you would need to be a medical doctor to do it anyway. And I was like, oh, okay. And I remember just crying on the phone silently. And I was like, I guess my dream isn't real. And it's like, I wish I remembered who that doctor was.
I was gonna say.
I could call her and be like, just kidding. Like, well, first she was right. Bitch. First she was right. It wasn't real. I just invented it. I made it real.
Well, that's what I was going to say too. Is
She was
like,
right, kind of.
yeah, maybe at the time.
Not about being a doctor.
But right. But that said, like, what is like your quote unquote like competition? Like, in the last 10 plus years, have more people in jobs similar to yours entered the field or whatever?
Yeah, that's interesting. So when I started blogging, this is me typing on a keyboard.
Gotcha. If you're watching.
Nobody was talking about dementia. Like there were barely any blogs or anything about dementia care. That was 2014. Now everybody and their mom has a TikTok, an Instagram, a podcast. And like, that's good and bad, because I think that there's also a lot of junk out there.
Totally.
And that's sort of problematic. Like, there are plenty of real experts like putting out good content, and then there are people where I'm like, I feel like you just got into this because it seemed like a good field to get into, but you don't actually, there's no reason for you to be in this field. So there's that. Competition wise, actual competition for our what we do, there's not a whole lot, because there are a lot of quote unquote dementia consultants out there, but they work with families. So I really wouldn't call them consultants. I would call them coaches. We work with senior living companies. So the people who create and design dementia care programs, slim to none. Like, there are consultants out there who you buy their program and you apply it to what your buildings. To my knowledge, we are the only firm that builds white label programs that, like, you come to us, you tell us what you want, and we'll build it for you. To my knowledge, we're the only one.
Okay.
So our prices reflect that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nat's going, yeah. Our prices reflect that. And then, so sometimes people will be like, oh, you're a lot more than, to name drop Teepa Snow, right? Teepa Snow has her own program, the GEMS program. And yes, we are more expensive, because we're building a program for you that you will then own the intellectual property for. And so that's really where that like hands-on piece comes. So there is a price difference.
And go ahead. You were going to say something, Nat? You first. I was just going to say, like, give us an example of like what that program consists of, like, as somebody who's not familiar with that.
I'm going to let Nat tell you.
Ooh.
She knows.
So much.
So much.
So my favorite thing, well, there's a few favorite things, but one of my favorite things about building a dementia care program for one of these companies is that we get to collaborate to marry their values as a company or organization with what we teach, which at the core is embracing their reality. So they adopt Rachael's platform, the Dementia by Day school platform. They teach their staff what we teach, but we also help them design a logo. So for example, right now we're working with a client that for them, they live in a really rural community, and working with their hands is something that's really important to their residents. So that's going to be reflected in their dementia care brand when we get to that step. When we think about, okay, what are these residents going to be doing every day? What's going to be on the calendar? We're going to make sure that there's something on the calendar once a week where the residents can use their hands and do something physical. So
if it's country, you guys should have like udders. You should have like udders and they milk fake cows. Boom.
I'm on board with
You're
that.
welcome.
I have a feeling that
fake
Rachel's
cows.
not gonna. Actually, they have a resident who was a dairy farmer who's like
Boom.
7 feet tall.
We'll just bring her on the team.
There it is, guys.
But you had asked about the podcast, like why we started the podcast. You did. Well, no, you did.
I did.
And then she got overruled.
But I'm ready to shift in that direction because we're talking about the business. We're getting sort of like into the nitty gritty of what the business looks like. We talked about the dementia piece. Obviously, that is our niche. That is your niche.
Yeah.
You are a dementia expert.
Right.
However,
Yeah.
because of that, you get kind of pigeonholed in the entrepreneur world, which is, I think, why you started this podcast.
It is, Natalie. It is. Because I'm working on a book right now titled I Can't Hustle Any Harder Than This. And a lot of it is done. I'd say I'm at least halfway done with the book.
And you are an author. You've already published.
I'm an author. Yeah, I'm a 3-time published author. Mm-hmm. But Johns Hopkins isn't interested in my 4th book because it's not about dementia. So when I'm like looking for agents who can pitch me to publishers, the response that I get is like, oh, but you're in dementia care. It's like, yes, I know, but I'm a business owner in dementia care. Like, it happens to be a business about dementia care, but it's a business. Because I get this sort of like, oh, but that's not your niche. And it's like, well, I mean, it is. Business is my other niche. I love talking about business, which is kind of where this podcast came from, and to help me be able to eventually, hopefully, find an agent. But that was the kind of experience, trying to get an agent.
So the argument that we're trying to make on this podcast is essentially that you're not only a dementia expert, but an expert in entrepreneurship and running a small business. Can you tell us, was there a time that you sort of realized that level of expertise? Like, okay, wait, I know what I'm doing now.
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like that's cumulative. Like it's come over time where I've realized that I know what I'm talking about. In the beginning, I was like, I don't know what I don't know. So I listened to a ton of business podcasts. I read a ton of books about business, and I just gained as much free knowledge as I could because I also had no money to spare, to like pay anybody to coach me or anything like that. And one of the problems I have about the coaching industry is that a lot of times people will get a business coach way before they need a business coach because they start a business. They're like, I need a coach. And it's like, no, you don't need a coach. You need to struggle for a while and figure out what you don't know before you go throw thousands of dollars at somebody who can tell you how to solve your business. Like you got to wade around in the muck of the business for a while and go like, okay, let me try to figure this out the best that I can.
And I'd say different strokes for different folks, I assume. Like that sounds like we're, somebody who isn't good at things the way that you are might not be as good at that.
Right.
I'm just saying,
I would say,
like somebody with a bunch of money to spare might be like, give me a coach.
Well, then I would say don't even start a business. Like I think in order to start a business, you have to want to struggle through the business piece of it because eventually you can hand things off to people. But I think you don't know what to hand off.
Yeah.
Like I this woman on LinkedIn I was talking to, her business is like essentially not a business. Like she's not really making any money. And so she had posted this thing like, hey, can anybody, share like successful tips with me about like marketing my classes or something like that. And so I had messaged her and she's telling me like she's not really making any money. And then she's telling me she wants to hire a coach for $3,500. And I'm like, but are you making $3,500 a month?
Yeah, to spare.
And the answer is no. So
I mean,
like,
you're
just going
definitely
to go into debt
yeah.
getting some dude to tell you what to do, but he's not going to do it for you. He's just going to tell you his cool ideas about like building funnels, and whatever else. And it's like, that's not.
I mean, I think hearing too, like you saying when you started out, you took all the free knowledge that you could have. Like that's a great thing to realize also that is something to do because of all the marketing of other things that you'd have to pay for to do.
You asked Nat, like when I realized, like there came a point where I was listening to the podcasts and reading the books and I was like, I already know about this. Yeah, I already know about this thing too. And then I was like, oh shit, I think I know more than these people who are podcasting about this. That's interesting. And so at some point, probably like 2020, I stopped listening to business podcasts and things because I was like, they're not giving me any new information. Like it's not interesting to me anymore because I love to learn and I was not learning anything. And I was like, I think I know more than these people.
And that's great. Because when that happens to me about like other life things, I'm like, I'm getting old and I'm close to death.
Well, now I feel like that right now.
Yeah, I only know this because I've been here for far too long.
Do you say it in that voice?
I
like
do.
You're the ghost of Christmas past.
Of yourself.
I've been here for too long.
I wanted to ask you what you've noticed you have in common with the other business owners we've had on this podcast. Like, has it been a validating experience for you? Has it been, I don't know, what has it been like?
Mm-hmm.
It's been interesting because everybody has a different type of business, but I think the overall experience, the people we've had on the podcast are generally people that I've known over time. And so I know that they're like quality people and people who have like put in the work and struggled. So I think that's probably the main commonality is like the entrepreneurs that I connect with are people who have like been doing this for a while and have struggled and are not sugarcoating or faking it. Like I hate I call them the fauxpreneurs. I hate the fauxpreneurs. The people who are like constantly posting on social media about like showcasing like how successful their business is. And it's like them on vacation, them, you know, like with their new car or whatever. And you either know and you know them in real life and know they're full of shit, or you're like, I spend this time going like, this doesn't really look real. You know, is this real? Because if you're spending all the time like showing how you're so successful, like, is that just a facade? Because to me, it looks like a facade. It looks fake. If you're like if you constantly have to tell people what you are or who you are you really that person? Like, as we say in improv, right? Like, show, don't tell. Like, if you're constantly telling me, like, all the guys in college would be like, I'm a nice guy. I don't know why girls don't like me. I'm a nice guy. You're probably not, actually. You're probably the worst.
Red flag.
Red flag. Like, you have to constantly tell somebody you're a nice person. You're probably not a nice person. If you have to constantly tell people how successful you are and how much money you're making and, like, you're probably not doing any of that. Now I, like, made myself dizzy because I'm old. I'm old now.
Oh, man.
It sounds like your passion for entrepreneurship is linked to your passion for sniffing out scams.
I love sniffing out a scam. And that's what season 2 is going to be all about, I think, of this podcast, is like sniffing out some business scams.
Is that because you know how hard it is? Like we were just talking about, to build something up. So then it's just like somebody faking it.
Makes me so mad.
Suckering other people into things. Just like really grinds your gears.
Makes me so mad. So mad. And like the one agent that I talked to, you know, she was like, well, you know, I really would just prefer your work sound like it's coming from a healed heart. And I was like, I think you got the wrong author, girl. Like, I don't think that's me. Like, I don't think I'm snarky. I'm quippy. I'm quick. I'm, you know, a lot of things. I'm plenty of good things and a couple of, you know, like anybody else, right? Not great things. But, yeah, like this is not, I don't think I have like a healed heart about fauxpreneurs and the scams and like this whole facade that like anybody can start a business and anybody can do it and you can wake up one morning and make a website and then you'll just be successful. And it's like, that is crazy.
Yeah.
That isn't real.
Yeah.
At all. I wish it were real, but if it were, a lot more people would be really rich entrepreneurs.
I'm curious about like when you started marketing yourself, like I'm always interested about like the beginnings of like, here's my brand. I'm putting myself online to get like, what was that like? Because when you talk about the people who are like putting themselves out there so much, I don't know. It's just interesting. It's scary to me when you see like people who are like already established, and I'm like, how did you get started? So how did you get started?
Scrappy. Literally what I did. So I got laid off and I was like, okay, I'm going to do my own thing now. So I started collecting unemployment and I filled in the other gap in my income from unemployment a couple times a week doing a caregiving job. So taking care of a woman living with dementia. I'm still friends with her son. So her son and daughter-in-law were her main caregivers, and then they hired people. So they found me on care.com, and I would go to her house and take care of her three days a week. And so that plus the unemployment kind of like supplemented my income, at least for like a little while. And what I did was I like printed out flyers and I drove like north, south, east, and west, like an hour outside of Pittsburgh. Like, so that also helped me because I actually was still fairly new to Pittsburgh and I got to know where everything is. So now if you like mention an area that's like within an hour, any direction of Pittsburgh, I'm like, oh yeah, I've probably been there. So I would go to these networking events, which were all, by the way, a total crapshoot. I got zero work from these. I probably went to 100 of these, like in a year.
What kind of networking?
Business networking.
Okay, just like general.
Senior living networking, really. So typically these are like salespeople in senior living companies. But I would go to these networking events and hand out my business card, like put up, and I would like hand out flyers at different senior living buildings. I would do that too. And I got nothing. nothing. I got maybe like one thing the entire time that turned into remotely anything. But I was doing these little gigs. I would like go and speak at a senior living building for like $300. And then I would do another one for like $300. And so when I see people on LinkedIn being like, I'm a consultant and I speak at buildings, I'm like, I know what you're doing. And it's not sustainable because you're going to a building, getting a few $100 and then like scrapping around trying to find the next $300 gig. And it's a killer.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure.
When you're like, you have to like claw tooth and nail to get your next like few $100. Like you don't know where your next few $100 are coming from. Whoa, that is stressful.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's terrifying, honestly. But I was young and I didn't have a lot of overhead, so you know, I had some room to move.
What's wild to me though, hearing you tell that story, to me, looking back as somebody who works with you now, I feel like possibly the most valuable. Well, obviously we're getting your reps in for doing public speaking engagements, but that caregiving gig was super important too, because you were a dementia care director, because you were a hands-on caregiver, it gives you such credibility with Dementia by Day School, because Dementia by Day School is built for professional caregivers. And when you give in-person trainings or when you're talking about, you know, telling a story in your video of how you solved a dementia-related challenge, you're able to speak to their everyday experience working with people living with dementia, and it's real. I'm
not making it up, or like I didn't watch videos about it and I'm telling you.
It's not theory.
It's real.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, it was scrappy.
And then so you're scrapping, and then when are you like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna make a video now. I'm gonna transition to that piece.
Oh boy, I don't know when I made my first. I guess I was pretty early on making videos. I started making them in my car. So if you look at my YouTube, a lot of my early videos are in my car. And recently I had some asshole comment on the video, I don't like when people make videos in their car. It's like, bitch, this was from like 5 years ago. Give it a rest. Also, like, don't come to my YouTube with an attitude. You know what I mean? Like, don't come to my videos just to hate on them. Get out of here.
Thanks for the engagement, though.
Thanks for the engagement. Get out of here. But I made them in my car because the lighting was really good. That's why I did it. And because it was like an easy contained spot where the acoustics were also pretty good. So, that's when I made my first video. So pretty early on, probably. What's your other piece?
I think that was
when did I
like,
when
and then
did I
like
decide also like that I was gonna
like grow
not
in
be
that.
so freaking scrappy all the time.
Well, yeah,
Probably like 2019, I was like, I'm really sick of trying to piece these gigs together. Like, I'm sick of chasing down my next $100. Like, this is not sustainable. I need a new way to do this. And I need to be able to have a gig, like work with a company for a few months at a time.
Okay.
And so I read a book by Pia Silva, who ended up being my business coach like about a year after that, talking about this thing she called a lead product, which is this idea that you get paid to pitch. So a company will pay you to do like an interview with them and figure out, you know, how you can help them. So I designed that whole program. At this point, I was still building my own website. I was still doing everything myself. Sold my first lead product. I think it was like $500. And I was ecstatic. And that they actually signed on. They ended up becoming a client. And I was like, oh my God, this works. Oh my God. Okay. All right. So now our lead product is called Evaluate and Escalate. It's $2,300, you know, so obviously far cry from the initial 500. But that is how we get clients, and you know, so much of a lifesaver than just like each moment being like, oh my God, where is my next dollar coming from?
Right.
You can't live like that.
And you started before things like Fiverr and Upwork and things like that, right?
They existed, but I was not really using anybody for anything.
Okay.
Like, it was all me,
Yeah.
every single thing. For a while.
I'm glad that you brought this up, Emily, and that things are taking this direction, because I just want to make sure that we talk about the loneliness, which we have touched on before, but specifically the burden of growth. that is on you, because I hate this. Because I love my job. I try my best, to help in my role as, the operations and marketing person for Dementia by Day. But at the end of the day, I'm not really the key person when it comes to bringing in new clients. I can get on a call with you and speak to what we do, kind of like how I did. I hope I did okay a little while ago, explaining how we design a dementia care program. But you're the closer, you're the face of Dementia by Day, you are the dementia expert. So that burden is unfortunately on you. And so I was hoping you could speak to that a little bit.
Oh, it's a blessing and a curse, because like when you have a success, you're like, yes, especially early on before I even had a team, I'd get a new client and I would just dance around in my office with my cats. I'm like, I did it. Yay. And now I can at least celebrate with other people, which is really nice. Like, I'm not so lonely, but there's still this loneliness factor of like, it does feel this immense weight on my shoulders in a different way. Like when it was just me, there was this weight on my shoulders of like, oh crap, it's just me. I got to do all these things. Now the weight has kind of shifted to, oh crap, if we don't sign these new clients, I have people relying on me for their income.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. And like, that's sort of terrifying. And I can't even like think about it too hard, because it'll like keep me awake at night. Other than my toddler who's going through a sleep regression, who will also keep me awake at night. But yeah, it'll keep me up, because it is the weight, that like shouldered weight has shifted to be, oh God, now I'm like responsible for other people. So it's still a loneliness. It's just a different sort of loneliness. But at least now, when there's something stupid that happens, I can complain about it to you and my mom, because she's part of the business. And if there's something amazing that happens, we can talk about that. Whereas before it was just like me, and I really couldn't even talk to any friends about it because they didn't know the ins and outs of what's going on. Yeah.
Well, I think we probably need to wrap up.
We probably need to wrap up this party. That was fun.
We might have to have another one of these.
We're going to do another one of
Maybe
these.
it's
Season 2.
Exactly. Season 2.
Talk more about the scams of things and the things that I've been pitched over the years.
Love it.
Because I've been pitched some dumb shit that I'd love to talk about.
Rachel, thank you so much for being a guest on your own podcast.
Yes. For having me.
Wait, is there anything that you want to plug in particular?
Oh, God, no. From
this podcast.
Yeah, pretty much.
I want to plug this podcast. If you're listening to this podcast, keep listening to this podcast.
Give us a like.
Give us likes. Give us stars. Give us subscribes. Send it to your friends.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, we appreciate it.